Well, hello everyone and welcome back to my channel where we are looking on leveraging Mpesa Daraja API using Django and React Native to make real-world mobile applications for both Android and iOS. In the last video, we looked at how we could initiate Mpesa transactions straight from our computer using Python code that initiated a payment request on our phones. In today's video, we'll be looking at how to do client-to-pay bill transactions, which is called C2B simulate. It's important to note that there's a difference between client-to-business and Lipa Na Mpesa Online. They basically do the same thing, but the way they initiated is pretty different. So first of all, we'll look at the differences between what we did yesterday, which is Lipa Na Mpesa, and what we're going to do today, which is client-to-pay bill. So if we come to the website, you find that there's here written C2B, which is client to business, meaning that a customer is sending money to a pay bill. And we also had, we used the Mpesa Express, which is the Mpesa Express request, which we said is used to initiate an online payment on behalf of a customer from the mobile phone to the pay bill. But so the big question is, what is the difference between the C2B and Lipa Na Mpesa Online? So as a recap of Lipa Na Mpesa Online, these are transactions where customers pay a certain pay bill using maybe the Safaricom app or any other online application that they are using on your mobile phone. So you can see on the screen here, for example, is the Safaricom app where you can pay certain money to a pay bill, and this is through Lipa Na Mpesa Online. On the second hand, we have another way which, in my opinion, majority of Kenyans use when they are paying their bills. So for example, a person comes and opens up the Safaricom SIM toolkit on their phones, then they manually go to pay bill and they select and they manually enter the pay bill number, the account number, and the amount. And this happens across all phones, whether you have internet or not. So, and this is what is called C2B. So what we will be doing in this video is looking at how we can also accept payments that people have sent through their SIM card application on their phones to our pay bill account. So just a quick comparison, you find that for the Lipa Na Mpesa, it must happen online first of all. The Lipa Na Mpesa Online code initiates the STK push for us. So like for example, like yesterday we put in the amount, the short code that we want to send and the account number, and it initiated that request to our phone. And we also only have one URL callback, and this yesterday, if you saw in the code, we just used the callback URL. However, when it comes to C2B, first of all, this is done directly from the SIM toolkit. So somebody goes to their phone, opens up the SIM card application, goes manually to Mpesa, selects pay bill, and then manually enters that. So it's more or less of a manual workflow. And in C2B, we usually have two URLs, one which is called the validation URL, and we also have a confirmation URL, and we'll look extensively into that. And again, guys, this is very important to know and to differentiate. And this is because this is usually like a big headache for people to initially understand. So let's assume first of all we want to do a Lipa Na Mpesa, what we did in the previous video and what we did through the developer.safaricom.co.ke website. So first of all, you have your mobile app. So in this case, I'm going to use the simple example of we want to pay to a certain pay bill using our Safaricom application. So we must be online. Then we go to the Safaricom app. So then what happens is that when we click the button, it's going to run. Okay, in this case, I've used the file that we put yesterday, which is run lipanampesa.py. So in the previous video, we ran the Lipa Na Mpesa file. In the future application that we'll be making, this file will be somewhere in the cloud. So when we make a payment, it's going to call that file and it's going to run. So when we run it, usually we've been sending information to Daraja API. So for example, in this file, when we run Lipa Na Mpesa, it sent this information to this URL, which is now here. So when we run this file, it sent the information to Daraja API, which is now the Safaricom URL. So when we send it to Safaricom URL, Safaricom is going to process our request and is going to check a couple of things. So if you remember, we once got an error said where we have an invalid access token. So Safaricom first checks whether you are authorized to do the transaction or not, whether your access token is valid. Safaricom will also check if you've put the correct parameters. So for example, if you've put an invalid amount, let's say you put a negative amount, or you put an invalid phone number, using this example. Sometimes you saw if we put an invalid URL, Safaricom is also going to outright reject, or if we leave one of the important information here blank, then Safaricom will process and make sure everything is in order. So after Safaricom makes sure that we have everything in order, it's going to send us back an immediate response, which is more or less an acknowledgement, where it gives us a payment received or not information. Basically, it's going to tell us if we've missed any parameters, where we've put everything as it's supposed to be. And in the previous video, this is the response we got when we run, for example, in this case, when we run Python file in terminal. So we've sent this information to this URL, then it's going to give us an immediate response, and this is what here it's called a response. We are printing out a response.txt. So this happens immediately, and it tells us success, request accepted for processing, and we get that STK push in our phones. So this is what is happening here. So when we receive the acknowledgement, is that acknowledgement, but that's not the end of it all. So when Safaricom has finished sending the acknowledgement, it's going to start in the process of sending you a final response. But before that, is going to send you an STK push. So you are going to receive on your phone a prompt asking you to put your Mpesa PIN so that you can pay the amount that you had put in this first stage. So if you put the PIN correctly, and that means you've accepted the payment, the response goes back to Daraja API, and that means you're going to get a response code of 0, which means it's okay. And Safaricom is now going to send you final details in your callback URL, and also send you an SMS saying that you've successfully, of course this means that you must have the amount, you must have some money in your Mpesa, but it's going to send you back to your callback URL, which we had listed here. And again, remember guys, we said that we've just guessed this callback URL. So as of now, we cannot be able to see the information that Safaricom has sent to us in this callback URL until in the future videos when we go ahead and make our own URL. So again, just to recap the process, we have our phone, we go online. This can be either the Mpesa site using the app, or the app that we are going to make. We click a button, or we do something that will initiate the Lipa Na Mpesa file, the function that we wrote. This is going to send the information to the Safaricom URL. The Safaricom URL, the Safaricom servers is going to process your request, whether you have the correct access token, the password, and everything in the request body is okay. Then it's going to send you an immediate response telling you success, whether they've successfully received your request or not. And if there's an error, it's going to tell you whether you have an invalid password, an invalid mobile number, or an invalid, for example, access token or URL. Then it's going to immediately start doing processing, and this processing it's going to send you an STK push to your phone, whether it's now you are supposed to put in your PIN. After successfully putting your PIN, this goes back to Daraja API, and then they send you, that means you've accepted the payment, and it's going now to send you the final details on your callback URL, which as of now we don't have. So and this callback URL, you're going to receive a lot of detailed information about the reference number of the payment that you've just made, the date and time, who you've paid to, and what have you. Another important thing to note is that this part where we are running this file and sending the information to Daraja API is completely synchronous. That means it's a synchronous request. This process where Safaricom is now processing and sending you information even to your callback URL is all done asynchronously. And the response that you also receive again is asynchronous. So this is Lipa Na Mpesa Online. So let's look at a workflow of what C2B transaction means. And remember, we've not written a single line of code about C2B, but I wanted to clearly put out the differences between the two. So the best example I can give of this is through a company called SasaHost. You can also use something like eCitizen, or you can even use something like Jumia.co.ke, or basically most of these companies that accept M-Pesa payment. So for example, here you can see I have an invoice that I need to pay. It's overdue, and I need to pay 1,160 shillings for a domain that I own. So, and here they have asked me to select whether I want to do a bank deposit or I want to do Lipa Na Mpesa pay bill. So I select Lipa Na Mpesa and I click on make payment. So it then opens up this page where I need to pay, and they say payment option 1. I can enter my Mpesa registered phone number below and click pay now. Then I need to check my mobile phone handset for an instant payment request from Safaricom. So this, if you've been following, and they're asking me to put the mobile number in this format 254 blah 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 blah. So this is exactly what we've been doing in the previous video and the one we did online. So this is now Lipa Na Mpesa Online. So what will happen is, if I put my number here 254 71 and I continue putting and I click on pay now, it's going to prompt a prompt is going to open up on my phone, which will ask me to pay this amount of money, which is 1,160 to their pay bill. So I don't even have to put their pay bill or the amount or the account number. They'll do that automatically. So this is Lipa Na Mpesa Online. So if you come here, there's a payment option 2, and they are saying to send this money, I need to go to my mobile phone, go to Mpesa, put this as the pay bill number and account number as this 177,413, which is this invoice. Again, please note this number here. They've given you an invoice number, and here they are saying the account number is this. And once I do that, and I put my PIN, this is the normal way that most people pay. I wait for a confirmation message from M-Pesa and also from them. So let's come back here to our slides. So for C2B, this is where we manually go to Safaricom SIM, or we go to the SIM application on our phones. We select Safaricom if you have a twin SIM. Then you go to physically to Lipa Na Mpesa, to M-Pesa, then Lipa Na Mpesa. Then you manually put in the pay bill number, the account number, and the amount. Then your PIN for M-Pesa. Again, this is how majority of people pay. Then this goes directly to Safaricom, where again they process your request to see if you've put the correct amount, or you've put the correct pay bill number. So like for example, if a pay bill number is supposed to have six numbers and you've put maybe 2, so it's going to do that. In our case, we'll be simulating that, and it's going again to immediately, from a developer's perspective, is going to give you an immediate acknowledgement saying that everything that you've put in the simulation has been okay. So then what happens, the slight difference now here is when Safaricom is processing your request, assuming you've put everything correct, it first sends contacts your validation URL. So it's going to send, remember we said for C2B we need to have 2 URLs, so it's going to send some information to your validation URL, and here we are supposed to do our own validation. So for example, in the previous example that I've given, so for example, if the company owed me 1,160 and I go to my SIM card and I pay maybe 1,000, this information will go to this URL, and we can program it in such a way to reject the payment or to accept it. So think of validation URL as where we can decide to accept or reject the transaction. Then we send back information to the Daraja API saying, okay, it's okay, we've accepted this payment of this amount from this number. And that means we are going to, of course, to give a response code of 0. So then finally Safaricom will send final information to your confirmation URL. Again, similar to the last time, this part is completely synchronous. In this case, I mean the receiving of when we do the simulation and when we receive the information, the processing in Safaricom servers is purely asynchronous, and also the response that we get is completely asynchronous. Again, don't worry too much about the differences between synchronous and asynchronous processing and responses. We are going to do that extensively when we look at URLs. And of course, from our validation URL, responding back to Safaricom and telling them we've accepted the payment, that's synchronous. So there's a few things again we need to note, and again I can't stress this enough. So when you are doing C2B, let me first of all open up quickly the code that we need for C2B. So I'm going to come here to the docs, and I'm going to open up Mpesa APIs, and I'm going to open up C2B. So this is similar to what I've just drawn, but you can also read theirs. And I come here to Python. Make sure I scroll. So you find here it's going, we need a confirmation URL and a validation URL. So coming back to the presentation, one pay bill must have one pair of URLs. You need a confirmation URL and a validation URL. The validation URL is where we decide to accept or reject the payments, and confirmation URL, that's where you get the final details from Safaricom pertaining the payment. But note that the same URLs can be used for other pay bills. So if you have like multiple businesses that have multiple pay bills, you can decide to have the same set of URLs for those pay bills. So again, it will be upon you, if you do that, if you're crazy to do that, to decide how you'll be validating or all these payments from different pay bills. Again, you must register the two URLs before doing a C2B. So coming back to the docs, you realize that here it's saying the API URL is C2B version 1 register URL, and here we are registering this URL. But to do the C2B, this is the code to do the C2B, which is similar to what we did for Lipa Na Mpesa, where we need a shortcode, command ID, amount, the phone number, and the bill reference number. In this case is the invoice number. Okay, and also if you come to the APIs and you come to C2B, you realize that here we have two things that we need to do. We need to register our confirmation and validation URLs. Then it's only then that we can be able to do the simulation of the transaction. So if you come back to the example that we had for the callback URL, if somebody knows this URL, that person, or hackers in this case, they can send you information in your callback URL using this body request, because they know the request body, what is needed. So somebody can come and send you fake information or exact replica information inside your callback URL, and they can trick you into thinking that you are receiving this information from Safaricom, and in the real sense, you are receiving this information from a dummy, from a dummy website, a dummy URL, or from somebody else. Of course, one of the videos that we'll be doing down the line is looking at security and protecting yourself from being hacked. But for the confirmation and validation URLs, it's best practice that you keep it a secret and you do not share it with anyone. So again, those are the two differences between C2B and Lipa Na Mpesa. Lipa Na Mpesa is done online, of course, initiating the SDK push on behalf of the client. C2B is where the customers go and do that manually on their mobile phones. So guys, I hope that you've understood in this short video the differences between Lipa Na Mpesa Online and C2B, because that will be vital in the future when you are making our apps, on how we can accept these two forms of payments to our pay bills. In the next video, we are going to dive now into C2B, on how we are going to register our URLs and how we are going to simulate a C2B transaction. So again, if you're finding me for the first time, please subscribe and also leave me a comment below if you have any questions that you need some clarification on. Of course guys, do not forget to subscribe and hit on the notification bell, as I'll be dropping these videos at sporadic times. Again, thank you so much for viewing my channel, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.